Bangalore. I haven't even slept here yet. I got off a plane about 5 hours ago. So if I fall asleep on stage, please come and rescue me. That was an awesome talk by Scott. So I'm going to touch on some of the things he raised later on in the talk. Before I start, though, I wanted to say why we decided to come to this conference and why did we decide to come to Bangalore. It's a place full of mobile developers with huge amount of talent. And the reason I can prove that is that last month, Facebook ran a tour. Every month at Facebook, we hold hackathons inside the company where every single engineer and product guy at Facebook comes together to build stuff every month. And we do it in 24 hours. And tons of the stuff that you see on Facebook every day started life in one of these hackathons. The like button started at a hackathon. Timeline was built by 7 people in 24 hours. The first version of it. I didn't do it. No, don't applaud me. And the reason we think this way of doing things is great is because, I've worked at big companies and small companies. And at big companies, sometimes you have people who you have to ask for permission for you to do your idea. And this totally sucks. Because when it's in your head, you've no idea how good it's going to be. You think you know. And if you want to do it, at many companies you have to convince other people to try and let you do your idea. At Facebook, you just have the chance to do it. And 24 hours later, you know if you've got a good idea or not. So we decided, that's how Facebook innovates as a company. That's how we do things. And so we decided to go and meet our developers. 80% of Facebook's developers are outside of the US and Canada. They're here. And so we had to pick 12 cities around the world. Just 12. Just 12. And we picked Bangalore. So this is the Facebook World Hack that we had here about 2 weeks ago. Any of you guys were there? Yes, 3 of you. Welcome, hello. Good to see you again. So this is why I wanted to come back to Bangalore and hang out with you guys. You guys are going to build the next generation of mobile apps on any platform. So I wanted to talk a little bit about how Facebook can help you. And it might not feel like it, right? But right now, and Scott kind of talked about this, we are in the middle of a revolution. And it's going to sound a bit silly, but it's true. It's not just one. There's actually 2 revolutions happening right now. And I don't know if you can feel them, but they are happening. Those crazy graphs that you saw in Scott's talk, that means something. There's changes afoot. And I want to talk about these 2 things. The first one is the shift to mobile. Sounds obvious, but I want to dig into it a little bit more. Last week, Facebook reached a milestone. We now have over 1 billion people using Facebook every single month. And it took us 8 years to get there. Just over 8 years. But it took us 8 years to get there. What's even more surprising is that we now have 600 million people using Facebook on a mobile device every month. And it only took us 4 years to get there. So half the time, over half the size, and these are exponential curves. This shift to mobile is huge. One of the great things about it, though, is that these users are twice as engaged as users on the web. They come back twice as often, and they do twice as much. So these are great users. I wanted to pick up some stats specifically about India. You guys may know these stats already, but I kind of put them in mainly for my own benefit to help me understand you and this country. There's 27 million smartphones in urban India, but as a percentage of the mobile users in total right now, it seems really small. If you think about the amount of growth that can happen there, this is going to change everything. And the smartphone market is growing 50% year on year. And those guys in India that have smartphones spend 2.5 hours a day on them. 2.5 hours a day. You guys are going to build apps, not only that reach a worldwide audience, but even only in India, in a few years, you'll reach millions of people holding a device in their hand for 2.5 hours a day. So what are they doing with their devices right now? Guess what? 93% of Indian Android users are using their Android device to access social networks. And of them, 88% of them are using it to access Facebook. So we're seeing this shift, right? We're seeing it in ourselves and our own products, and we're seeing it faster and bigger and stronger than anyone expected, which is why this is one of the most exciting rooms in the world. You guys are going to build the next set of apps to run in this ecosystem on these devices for these users. And that's how Facebook compares to the other social networks in India right now. And that's what I wanted to talk about. You guys are going to build apps. My job, our job at Facebook, is to help you win, to help you grow, to help you get bigger. And that's why you should be integrating our stuff into your apps. So I've talked a little bit there about like the mobile ecosystem itself, but I really wanted to focus on what Facebook is doing to help developers like you. And while Facebook is available on many, many platforms, the three that we care about where you can build Facebook into your app are iOS, Android, and the mobile web. So I'm going to talk a little bit about the mobile web later, but I want to start with iOS and Android. This is where you begin. We have SDKs for iOS and Android. Why would you bother? The main reason is growth, and I'll come back to that in a minute. But when you think about an app for the first time, what does it know? What do you know about the user? Not very much. On the web, you know literally nothing. You know their IP address, you know their browser, you maybe know their operating system, but that's it, blank canvas. On a mobile device, you may have access to their location, you may have access to their phone book, you may have access to a bunch of other stuff that tells you more about the user. But what Facebook brings you is 4 key things. It's not just authentication, that is the basic. The great thing about Facebook authentication is it works across many platforms. You have a user on an Android device, you have a user on the mobile web, you can tie them together. But this is where it gets interesting. The next part of the stack is identity. Facebook doesn't just tell you who they are, it tells you who they are. Their name, their gender, their locale, their picture. You can't get that from a raw phone. And then you can get the social graph. You can find out who their friends are, which means you can build these incredible experiences. I'll come on to why this is important later. And then the killer thing is you get the interest graph. You not only know who this person is, what they look like, what their name is, what their gender is, who their friends are, you can find out a bunch of other information about them that means you can build incredible experiences. So let's look at them happen. How many of you guys know Quora? Heard of Quora? Okay, a few of you. The question and answer. Well, I was going to say website, but it's not. It's a question and answer product. It's a service. It exists on many platforms. Now, this is the video of what happened when I downloaded Quora to my Android device and tapped on it for the very first time. Go. Load up Quora. Going to sign up with Facebook. I've never ever used Quora before, right? Never used it before. I should have a little timer here. I'm going to log in with Facebook. And now we're going to go back to Quora. And look at what I see. Boom, I'm in. And here is all the stuff by my friends. I've used Quora never before, but now Quora knows who I am. It's showing me content published into Quora by my friends. And because it knows I'm into like technology and I like Apple and I like all these other things, then the questions it's going to show me are relevant to me. That took 4 seconds. And that's an extremely powerful way of building an amazing experience when you first use one of your apps, right? No sign up, no form filling in, nothing to do. Just works. Let's see the same thing on iOS. This is Vidi, different app. They call it the Instagram for video. Same thing. Log in. Back to Vidi. Vidi's just going to log me in, create me an account, follow all my friends, and the next thing I see is content from my friends. That's it. It's just awesome. And because it's a social experience in the app is better. Like, it's more relevant. I get it. I like it. I'm going to use it more often. And that's what it used to look like. With iOS 6, we're baked into the OS. So I'm going to use another example with a different app now. This is an app called FriendSmash, which you can download. But watch how quick this is. Ready? Go. Click. Log in with Facebook. Okay. That was it. Ready? There we go. And now I'm going to play this game with my friends. Because we're baked into the OS, you can get access to those 4 things: identity, authentication, the social graph, and the interest group. That's probably why 7 of the top 10 iOS apps and 7 of the top 10 grossing Google Play apps are integrated with our stuff. Because they understand the benefit of those 4 things. So I talked a little bit there about like the first revolution that we're in right now. And it's this magic shift to mobile, which is why everyone who is a web developer is learning to be a mobile web developer. Tons of people who were mobile web developers are learning to code for iOS and Android too. But here's the big change. People at the center. Now I'm going to get a bit existential now, so bear with me. I know this is a developer event, but like, I kind of believe this stuff, so bear with me. This is where it starts. A campfire. Thousands of years ago, like, our ancestors sat around campfires and they told stories. They talked to each other. They talked to each other about where the food is, how to get across the river, who's doing what with who, how to attack somebody. I don't know. They talked about a ton of things, right? It's how they shared information, and it's how they built bonds, how they became close. And Scott gave you a great demonstration how far we've come in the 21 years since the birth of the web. But he did make that point. The first generation of the web was about documents. It was about things linked together. It was about information retrieval. It was about this being linked to this. And it changed everything. But it's not a great platform for telling stories. For a start, most web pages were the same for everyone. Most of what we did on the web was anonymous. It's not a great platform for telling stories when you can't write to it and it doesn't know who you are. So here's the big shift. And I don't just mean Facebook here. Look at your daily lives. How much content do you find from your friends? Twitter, Facebook, Google+, LinkedIn, forums. What these services have in common is that the way you discover stuff, the way you find new things, is through people, through your friends. It's about putting people at the center of the experience. So there's the fluffy stuff. How do you actually do it? So here's how we think you can build services like this. By integrating with Facebook, you make it really easy for the people who use your apps on any platform to share stories, share what they're doing, share what they're interested in, share where they are, share what they're cooking, reading, watching, running, everything. And why should you care about that? As a developer, what you get in return from Facebook is traffic. We send you traffic. we make your app grow. And the way we do this is by allowing you to model every interaction a user can have with anything in your application. So this is something we call the Open Graph. I'm going to get into some examples in a minute, but I just want to talk you through it. As I said, when we started, we put identity on the web. And then we linked it with the people you know and the people you care about. And then we linked it with the things you like. Movies, brands, sports teams, people. But that's not enough. It's not expressive enough. It's not enough to define a story, who we are, what we're doing. So we built the Open Graph, which allows you to publish structured data to Facebook. Why? So that you can tell stories. So users can tell rich, interactive stories about what they're doing. Let's look at an example. Any of you guys know Endomondo? Okay, a few of you. Awesome. This is one of my favorite apps. Endomondo is a sports tracking app. There's a ton of them. Strava, Runkeeper, Runtastic, Nike Plus. There's a million. But Runkeeper is the one I use. And this is why. Not only does it track what I do as I go on a cycle ride. This is a real cycle ride I did. It was 70 kilometers and it took me 3.5 hours. I was exhausted at the end. I should probably do a little bit more. But the reason I use Endomondo is, number one, it's social by design, right? As I use Endomondo, I can see what my friends have done. But this is table stakes. This isn't new. This is 3 years ago. If you're not doing this, your app is going to be beaten by someone who is. But Endomondo does another thing. They add this magic switch. Connect with Facebook, share my workouts on my timeline. And if that is on, then guess what? When I take my phone on a run or a cycle ride, when I finish it, it publishes it to Facebook. It doesn't publish an image. This is not an image. This is a map. What they've published is the actual geopoints that my phone tagged along the route. They've actually published the distance. If I was wearing a heart rate monitor, they'd have actually published the heart rate. And the reason this is cool is, number one, Facebook can display this on every platform because we understand the data, we understand the meaning, the semantics. And the second thing is, it means we can aggregate it. It means not only is the fact that I went on this humongous ride a story, but as I do more and more of them, it's not just the runs I went on. Facebook can now show my friends how much I've run this month, how much I've cycled this month. Has this month beaten last month? Because we understand the data, magic things happen. If I click on those stories on the web, iOS, Android, or the mobile web, I end up at Endomondo, right? If I do it on iOS or Android and I don't have Endomondo installed, Facebook's going to send me to the App Center, to Google Play or the App Store to download it. So what happened there, right? I went for a cycle ride. I finished my cycle ride, I pressed finished. It uploaded the structured data to Facebook. My friends saw that story, they clicked on it, and they either came back to Endomondo or they became a brand new Endomondo user. Because Endomondo is putting people at the center of the experience, they're going to get traffic. They're going to grow. They're going to get new users. And because they're social by design, we list them in our own App Center, which means it's a really simple way to find social apps that your friends are using. By integrating Facebook into their iOS and their Android and their mobile web apps, Facebook sends them traffic. App Center alone has 130 million monthly active users. And a really interesting thing we've heard from the people that are in it is if a user discovers your app through App Center, they're 35% more likely to come back the next day. So just because it's social, people are going to come back more often. Let me give you another example. This is a great story, right? This company is based in France. They were going bust. They'd made a few games. They had literally a week of money left. And then they made this. They made Songpop. Songpop is not a Facebook app. It's not an iOS app. It's not an Android app. It's all of these things. It exists on the desktop web, in iOS, and in Android. And they connected all these three places up with Facebook. If you use it on iOS, you log in with Facebook. If you use it on Android, you log in with Facebook. And because it's social and they publish to the Open Graph, this is what happens, right? So this is the real video that I took the other day. On the left, this is what happens when somebody, one of my friends, sees my Songpop activity. Ready? Real time, nothing cut out here. Scroll down. Yes, I guessed Seal, Kiss from a Rose. Amazing record. I'm going to go to Google Play. The longest thing in this entire demo is downloading the app itself. There we go. Open it. Log in with Facebook. And now I'm playing Songpop. Songpop got a new user because of a friend. This is the best kind of referral you can get. This is not an advert. This is not a friend telling you offline and you having to get your phone out and type in Songpop into the search box in Google Play or the App Store. It just worked. Remember all those stats I told you at the start? That's how many people could see your app. Not just in India, worldwide. On the right is the same flow of what happens if I have Songpop already installed. I'm going to click it. I'm going to end up at Songpop. So if you guys are building apps that have a consumer, like that are for the consumer, I don't understand why you wouldn't do this. This is all extra. That's what happened. They had 9.7 million users in 3 months, and the company is no longer going bust. They've just moved into a new office. Because they made a killer social experience that took advantage of these two massive shifts that are happening in the industry. The shift to mobile, more specifically, the fact that people play things across all platforms, or people use things across all platforms. And secondly, they put people at the center of the experience. I'm going to show you another video now, which is basically the same thing for iOS, but instead of publishing to Open Graph, this is something called requests. And again, no sequences shortened here. This video is 1.5 minutes long. On the right, this guy is going to pick a friend to invite to this app. He's going to pick Dave Schatz. He's going to click send. Dave Schatz is going to get a push notification from Facebook. He's going to swipe it. Now we know his password. He's going to see that pop up as a notification. He's going to tap on it. And guess what? He's going to end up at the App Store to download and install that app. So again, think about how this flow happens today. You have to ask someone with your mouth, what apps are you playing? What games are you playing? They have to tell you, and you have to type it in. And then hopefully you find it. This is 1.5 minutes, and this app acquired a new user thanks to Facebook. In the last 30 days, you sent users through that flow 174 million times. So with Facebook, the numbers are often crazy big. But that, for you guys, is growth. That's taking an app and making it win. So, I've talked a lot already about iOS and Android apps, native apps. But I want to spend the last few minutes of my talk talking about HTML5. How many of you heard what my boss, Mark Zuckerberg, said in an interview about 2 weeks ago about HTML5? Okay, good. A few of you. Just in case you forgot, he said, when I'm introspective about the last few years, I think the biggest mistake Facebook made as a company was betting too much on HTML5 as opposed to native, because it just wasn't there. Now, I started as a web guy, and Scott is already, like, staring at me now. But don't worry, this ends well. So let me explain what he meant. And to understand that, you have to go back to where Facebook was 2 years ago. In fact, where the entire mobile ecosystem was 2 years ago. 2 years ago, it wasn't obvious that these two smartphone platforms, iOS and Android, would come to dominate. It looked like there would be many. At the time, BlackBerry, Nokia, Palm, Windows, a bunch of stuff. Facebook was a web company back then. We had a bunch of people who wrote web code. We are guys that write HTML, CSS, and JavaScript. And we baked it on the server, and we shipped it to the client using HTTP. That's how we rolled. And there were some great things about that, right? It meant that we can release and update Facebook whenever we want. We release Facebook twice a day to 1 billion users twice a day. In native apps, you have to kind of build your code, wrap it up, submit it to someone, hope they approve it, put it on the store. The lead time is immense. And not only that, then people have to actually get to that new app and download it and install it. So 2 years ago, we built this thing called FaceWeb, which allowed us to put HTML inside a native app. You guys know PhoneGap? Heard of PhoneGap? Good stuff. FaceWeb is like PhoneGap, but our own version. And it did what we wanted it to do. We could update at will. It meant we could use all of our developers to just make this app. And it meant that we could touch many devices with a single code base. And it worked for us. Except it did up to a point. Turns out, on iOS, the stuff we were trying to do is actually really complex. We thought it was easy. We thought it would just be a view, a great big list of stuff. That's what Newsfeed is, a list. But Newsfeed isn't just a list. It's a long list. People love to scroll. And it's full of images, massive images. So it turns out the core piece of Facebook, the thing that is Facebook for most people, the Newsfeed, is hard. And so about a month ago now, we launched a new version of our iOS app, built in native code. It's twice as fast. And you can see we went from 2 to 4 stars in 3 weeks. Users love it. In fact, it's so much better, people are actually browsing twice as much content using the new app than the old app. But we had to completely retool the company. We had to completely retool Facebook. We had to hire new people. We had to retrain existing guys. And we had to think differently about how we ship and build products. So, is HTML5 dead? Does Facebook think HTML5 is dead? No. Here's why. If you go on to think about what Mark said next, it comes down to this. Facebook's problems are not everyone's problems. We are at a size now where we can afford to have this team dedicated to iOS and this team dedicated to Android. And it turns out our app is big and complex, and people expect a lot of us. But if you're building something simple, or even if you're building something fairly complex really well, it's a perfectly valid strategy to build a mobile web app. To wrap it in PhoneGap, or to not build a native app at all. Just to build an app that lives on the web. Our problems are not everyone's problems. So Zuck actually went on to say, it's not that HTML5 is bad. I'm actually, on the long term, excited about it. And here's my favorite bit. One of the things that's really interesting is Facebook has more users of its mobile website than we do our iOS and Android apps combined. So does Facebook care about HTML5? Yes. More of our users use HTML5 than any other platform. So we have a huge stake in the future of HTML5. Mobile web, bigger than the rest. 7,000 devices a day, different devices a day accessing it. But there's 3 main problems. Distribution, performance, and monetization. Distribution, I've talked about. Facebook can help. Other sites can help. Performance, that's about CPU performance, but also access to the device features itself. And monetization, still TBD. So does Facebook care about HTML5? Yes. If it's taught us anything, this whole iOS debacle, it means we have to make more effort around HTML5. We have to try harder. So we are a founding member of the Core Mob group in the W3C. It's the largest community group at the W3C. In fact, it's the second largest community group, second largest group of any size. And it's about standardizing features, building test suites, and providing use cases. All of these people are in the room. And that's because we need to make HTML5 better, to make it the mobile web platform it could be. One of the other things we've built is Ringmark. You remember the acid test suite for browsers back in the day? Ringmark is that for the mobile web. What it does is it tests mobile web browsers to see how good they are. What features have they implemented? There are 3 rings. The first ring, ring 0, is what we expect to have today. Ring 1 is what we need to build 9 of the top 10 iOS or Android apps. And something very exciting happened a few weeks ago. The very first browser to pass ring 1 was released. Dolphin Browser Beta for Android. And here it is, running Ringmark. Runs ring 0, and because it passes ring 0, it runs ring 1. And it passes ring 1. That means you have access to things like multi-track audio, CSS transitions, a bunch of stuff that you need to build great mobile web apps. And this is built into BrowserScope. So not only can we see, does a browser pass it, we can track it over time. And then 3 days ago, we got together with these guys to launch webplatform.org, a canonical representation of all the documentation you need to build web apps. So that's it. If you're building apps on iOS, Android, or the mobile web, number 1, you've done the first thing. You're not building desktop web apps, or you're building mobile. And the second is put Facebook at the center of the experience, put people at the center of the experience, and we'll drive the traffic. Do we care about HTML5? Do we care about the web? Yes. Thank you very much.